What do they call you? Workplaces around the world are starting to develop their understanding of and sensitivity to gender fluidity, embracing the practice of sharing personal pronouns as part of diversity initiatives. By Megan Breen. Ro Allen, Victoria's Equal Opportunity and Human Rights Commissioner, says they walk through the world with many pronouns attached to them, from their mother using she to members of the LGBTIQA+ community using they, to shopkeepers referring to them as him. Gender is a fluid concept for Allen, and one they have spent years educating people about. For anyone who has trouble grasping the concept of gender identity, and who questions how Allen can respond to all of the above pronouns, they say the first premise is to understand that gender is fluid and is a continuum. Allen says, to understand the use of diverse pronouns, you do need to understand there's more than male and female, or woman and man. If you can sign up to that, and you understand that, then obviously the use of other pronouns becomes easier. I'm gender fluid. I say to people, pronoun me as you see me. I'm okay with that, but others may not be. When I'm educating groups, I say it's just manners. If someone says, this is my pronoun, then you do your best to use that pronoun. I think the trickiest group I've ever tried to explain this to was some English teachers. They argued it's not grammatically correct, and therefore you can't change it, says Allen. These English teachers are not the only ones grappling with this interpretation of gender. For some people, there is a degree of confusion in gender not necessarily being linked to biological sex, and they may find it difficult to use gender-neutral pronouns such as they or them. When Joe Ball, CEO of Switchboard Victoria, an LGBTQIA+ mental health and family violence support service, hears complaints about how hard it is to remember someone's pronouns, they point to the ability of some people to remember every football player in their favourite club. People always say it's a lot of work keeping on top of it, but I think the human mind has a lot of capacity to do this. I use that example because it is extraordinary how people can rattle off the last few years of footy players' names, but they can't learn how to address someone the way they identify themselves. Nobody wants to be misidentified about who they really are. Think about what your gender is, and then imagine that somebody would just constantly never get that right. I think that everyone can imagine what that feeling would be like. Well, that's what trans people go through every day, and from multiple people, says Ball. In workplaces across the globe, there is evidence of a growing understanding that gender is complicated, that pronouns are personal, and that everybody has a different relationship with them. Many workplaces are working on policies to make everyone feel welcome and included. Adding pronouns to email signature blocks and social media profiles has also been growing in popularity, both as an effort to educate people that not everyone identifies as male or female, as well as showing support for colleagues in their choices. Ro Allen says, I think the most important thing to understand is that language evolves all the time, and that we are moving towards a greater acceptance of the use of diverse pronouns. I know for trans, non-binary, and gender-fluid folks like myself, adding pronouns to an email block shows solidarity and support, but it also might put pressure on someone else. It is important to give people a choice and to be aware that it is effectively asking someone to come out in a similar way to expressively coming out about their sexuality. I'm a big believer that no organisation should force people to put their pronouns on their email signature for a whole range of reasons. I've seen that happen where people may not be ready to publicly identify their pronouns. Emily Jacks, founder and managing director at HR Gurus, says that while there may be good intentions behind a policy to add pronouns to communication methods, it may cause more harm than good if not done properly. When an organisation implements the pronouns in signatures without any education or change process, it is fraught with danger. The key is in the messaging, and using this strategy will help all employees understand the importance of respect, understanding, and accepting differences in the workplace. Discrimination is still an issue, and while there is still work to do in educating people about the diverse nature of our workforces, younger generations in particular are very much on board with this concept, and it is only going to increase in need, says Jack. Language is dynamic and always evolving. Going back in time, the singular they and their were commonly used in English from the 14th century onwards, and can be seen in the writings of Geoffrey Chaucer, William Shakespeare, and Jane Austen, among others. The shift towards gendered personal pronouns is a relatively recent phenomenon, gaining in popularity among grammarians in the 19th century. Now the tide is shifting again, with a Merriam-Webster dictionary declaring they as the 2019 word of the year, in part because of the return to non-binary pronouns. Tiger Webb, language specialist and editorial policies advisor at the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, says some people have strong feelings that grammatical gender should match biological gender. Webb says, this is misguided. About half the world's languages do not have grammatical gender at all. Webb also points out that people can accept the appearance of new nouns and verbs, but pronouns are often treated like a closed class of words that don't change. Some people feel a bit of a disjunct between using they to describe a single person or referent because it is often taught as being only a plural pronoun. However, they has referred grammatically to singular antecedents in English for hundreds of years, says Webb. The English second-person pronoun you was originally solely plural too, but over time has shifted to being both singular and plural. Thou was used for singular reference and ye for plural reference. This is relevant because it demonstrates it's perfectly grammatical to say, they are the new design lead on the team, when referring to one non-binary person, just as it is grammatical to say, you are the new CEO to one person. The effect of being addressed by the wrong pronoun varies from person to person. For some, it's just a matter of receiving an apology and moving on, while for others, the impact on mental health can be severe. Ball says Switchboard Victoria regularly receives calls from people seeking advice on how to have a conversation about their pronouns, and that some people face hostility when they ask others to address them using a different pronoun. We hear from people that the conversation is still weaponized and volatile, and it is pretty awful to think that people are worrying about that. How do we make it easier so that people are not so stressed that they are worrying about it? It should be as simple as being able to say, it's an extension of your name. Ball offers some advice for those who worry about getting it wrong with others. You can simply try by asking them which pronoun they prefer. If you take a guess and make a mistake, simply apologize and move on. I'm a transgender person, and the most important thing for me is that if someone gets my pronouns wrong, they just say sorry. It doesn't need to be a big performance. Don't go into a shame spiral. Just treat it as if you'd have called the person the wrong name. That's embarrassing, but you can get over it. I think for me as a trans person, as long as I feel that the intention is good and it's not bullying, they're not deliberately getting it wrong, then I will be fine.